The first question is always going to be, what do you want to do with this? Well, I mean, because building a lifestyle company is fine if that's what you want to do. No, we have to scale it. I mean, okay, so what does scaling mean to you? I mean, what's the rate of growth? I have to grow 20% a year. Why? Why do you have to grow 20% a year? Really understanding what these reasons are. Okay, so what happens if you don't? There's no if we don't. We have to, we will. What do I have to do to grow 20% a year? Now I can help.
Yep.
Because now I'm going to look at who's in leadership at every role, including that person. And based on what you've told me you have to do, that person I may say, keep the title, but you're going to have to go over here and do something else and bring in somebody else that's wired to drive that kind of growth.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Powers, and I want to thank you for joining me on the Fort Podcast today. This show is an open-ended discussion and journey covering real estate, business, entrepreneurship, and investing. I would love to hear from you by tweeting me at Fort Worth Chris on Twitter. Hey guys, it's Chris. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Fort. I have a really cool episode with a good friend of mine, Stanton Williams, who's an executive advisor at Culture Index, which is a nationwide company that helps businesses maximize the bottom line by optimizing your organization from the top down. Culture Index is a strategic advisory firm that works exclusively with visionary entrepreneurs, CEOs, business leaders, and management to scale and transform organizations using applied analytical traits. They optimize your organization using your most precious resource, people. So for a little background, Stanton and I met about 3 or 4 years ago. Our company has been a client of Culture Index for the last 3 or 4 years since meeting, and it has been one of the biggest game changers, not only for our business, but for me personally. It's really helped me understand people. It's helped me understand that there are lots of people that think about the world in front of them in different ways. I think in ways it's helped me mature. It's helped me identify places in my life that I can double down on and work on my strengths, while at the same time understanding where my weaknesses are and helping bring other people into my life that can help complement my weaknesses, which in business is almost everything. So today we talk about what Culture Index is and how it was created. We talk about the 7 ways that people are measured: autonomy, social ability, their pace, their ability to conform, their energy units, their logic and their ingenuity. We talk about the type of profiles that people have. Are they visionary? Are they technical? Are they more social? Are they more organizational? We talk about common mistakes that businesses make early on when hiring people and successes that businesses have had when getting the right people on the bus. We talk about the cost of turnover. We talk about the makeup of the typical founder or CEO. And we also have an interesting discussion on the 30 US senators that took the Culture Index test and the results that came from that. And it paints a little bit of a picture of maybe why the political leadership in our country tends to do the things they do, good or bad. So Stanton has played a huge role in my life. This is a really cool episode to help understand who people are and how it helps in business. And so thank you again for joining me on this journey, and enjoy. Stanton, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris. It's great to be here.
I'm excited to have you today.
I'm excited to be here.
Been through a lot together. Can you start with maybe just your story and kind of what brought you to Culture Index?
Yeah, I'm a growth guy. I'm a bigger, stronger, faster guy. Even when I was in school, I knew long term I didn't want to work for somebody the rest of my life, but I didn't have a great idea at that point. So I took a job with a company here in Fort Worth that was a startup. Found out later that they had just reached a cash flow positive range at about the time I started. And I helped that company grow from $1 million in revenue to $4 million at which point they sold. And I participated in an exit, partially in an exit. But I stayed around because pretty shortly thereafter, the president and vice president blew themselves up. Actually, one had a nervous breakdown and one hurled enough email grenades that he was asked to leave. So I was made president at that point. The key for anyone like me, Chris, is that we have to control our own destiny. So I was able to scratch the itch in terms of creating my own destiny for a lot of years. I made a lot of money early on. When I was made president, I was given the freedom to do whatever we needed to do to grow. And we grew. This was a professional services company, very profitable. So we took it from 4 million to 15 million. And we made, when I left, we were making about 5 million EBITDA.
Wow.
So I just tell you this to say, I never really wanted to work for anyone that long.
Yeah.
It was a lot of years.
How many?
I was 10 years as president, 23 years total.
Wow.
And so the challenge, which you will pick up on very quickly is, and I can look back on now, is that it was golden handcuffs. I made enough money and had enough freedom that I stayed in those years past. And a lot of those are opportunity years that you just don't get back. But did learn a lot, and we went through a number of acquisitions.
Yeah.
And I had always thought that I would find a way to be able to buy it. That wasn't meant to be. We went through one final acquisition, knew about 30 days into it that wasn't going to work well for me.
Yeah.
So I ended up making my move, told them I wanted to buy it. It wasn't for sale. I knew that. So it was basically a death by cop situation, but I needed to be set free. Nice severance. From there, I looked for a long time for a company to buy and looked at a number of them. I just didn't see anything there that made a lot of sense. There's a lot of junk out there.
Yeah.
If you and what I've found out since is you pretty much need to look at 100 to find one. Now you may get fortunate, but I looked at a bunch of them and I just didn't find the right one. I decided to start a mobile app company with somebody that I'd met during that process that had never missed, and we gave it a really good shot. This was a loyalty app in the convenience store, in the grocery store space.
Okay.
Made a lot of sense on paper, and we gave it a nice run. That one didn't work. So when I left my role at Source Corp, that's the company I grew, I didn't look for a job.
Yeah.
I didn't want to work for anybody.
Right.
I thought, how can you invest that kind of time and then just get shot?
Right.
And then you have no equity, and so I'm not doing that again.
Yep.
I found a data room company for sale that I knew we could grow. So I bought it with another person here in Fort Worth. We transitioned the model to make it more than just a Dropbox on steroids. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we tweaked it so that it would make it really easy for, tax clients of accounting firms to drag and drop their tax information securely.
Yeah.
And so, we worked on that. We did some good. I thought long term, this isn't really making me all that happy. I'm not having that much fun. My partner was passionate about it, and so I sold my shares to her. But during the process, I'd become acquainted with Culture Index, and we had used Culture Index to help us grow. So just a little word about Culture Index. There are a lot of personality profile companies out there. Culture Index, I learned very, very early on, does not consider themselves to be in the personality profile space.
Right.
So I had always used hiring instruments to help me make better hiring decisions. I had never been introduced to a language of understanding people. I was always interpreting information through a report or through the eyes of somebody else without having the benefit of having all of the knowledge of how people tick myself.
Right.
This was the first I had been exposed to an idea like this.
Yep.
So I signed on as a client. I was blown away by the knowledge. Didn't apply all the knowledge to begin with. I got myself into some trouble because I'm a knucklehead. I go fast, and I think I know more sometimes than I know. But when I followed the program, it made a big difference. That's what got me exposed to Culture Index. After I sold my shares, again,
back in the wild.
I'm 50 years old at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, while I thought there should be a line of people knocking on my door, lighting me up on the phone, there weren't.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I didn't want to just go work for somebody. So I knew my advisor at Culture Index was having a whole lot of fun helping companies do the things that I did successfully, meeting a lot of kick-ass people. And I thought, that could be a lot of fun.
Yep. Freedom,
Independence, control on destiny, compensation was open-ended based on my effort. So I checked in with the local Dallas-Fort Worth office and started that process.
Okay, so let's just kind of start with the general question, which is, what is Culture Index?
Yeah, so Culture Index is a program. It's a system and a process for growing businesses. You say, what do you mean by that? Think of it as Moneyball for business. So we're using data, using analytics to help businesses grow. So it starts with, who do we have on the bus?
Yep.
Who is in the right seat, who's not, and why, based on the data. And what I mean by this is psychologists tell us that our personality traits are set early in life. Nature, nurture sets our traits. Many will say it's as early as age 4, 5, or 6. Not that they're all obvious that early. No one's going to say that it's after age 12. Once the traits are set, they're set. They don't change. So we understand in a very short process what the traits are. And we know what people are born on this earth to do and to do well. So we understand who's in the right seat, who's not, and why based on the data. We understand what motivates people, what demotivates people, how to communicate with people in ways that are going to make them happiest. The program's about reducing turnover. Why do people quit? 60% of the reason is they quit people. I hate my manager. I hate my coworkers. Well, if I hate my coworkers, whose fault is it?
Yep.
It's the manager. So it's making sure that we understand what makes people tick, and then the application of that knowledge is the magic.
Who created it?
Yeah, good question. Gary Wallstrom is the founder.
Okay.
So Gary has well over 50 years experience in this field. He was a Russian linguist in the Vietnam War. He was taught how to behaviorally interview people and pick up on things that we pick up on, and many other things, verbal, nonverbal, those kinds of things. He got a job as a bartender back in the 70s for Steak and Ale, and did a great job. Did such a great job that Steak and Ale decided they were going to give him the opportunity to open a store. Well, because of his behavioral profiling skills and his results-oriented pattern, he did very well.
Yeah.
And then they went to him and said, Gary, we want you to open up half of the stores in the U.S. And he thought to himself, well, that's great. Now, this was owned by Brinker at the time.
Right.
He thought, great, but how do I leverage my profiling skills? I can't. So he looked for anything on the market that might help him. He found Predictive Index, and he used Predictive Index to help him open up all those stores. They were very successful.
And that's because he knew which people should be in which parts of the restaurant.
Right. So there are certain patterns that are going to lend themselves to the very best experience at a restaurant from a wait staff perspective. Those people aren't necessarily the best to lead others. So that was another type pattern. And then there were process-oriented perfectionists that he was looking for cooks.
Yep.
He didn't want anybody to innovate. He needed somebody to follow the process.
Right. Yep.
So that's the short of that. He wanted to buy Predictive Index. It wasn't for sale. Along the way, he did build a Predictive Index business. He built it. He and a few of his peers had decided that as opposed to an HR program, it should be a strategic program.
Right.
In other words, we're not going to HR. We're going to the business owner to drive business results. So Culture Index is about driving more revenue, more profit, and sustainable scale for businesses. In 2004, he decided to create Culture Index. So he hired a psychometrician and actually a team of psychometricians. It took them over 5 years. And by the way, a psychometrician is think of a psychologist with deep mathematics. Think of a psychologist marrying a mathematician and having a baby. So they study personalities, and it took him over 5 years and every bit of his money to develop what we have today. So we have the sharpest tool in the shed that we know of. We have the most valid survey of its kind, certainly that can be completed in under 10 minutes, but that's not the reason people work with Culture Index. The reason is because we know and we teach how to interpret the data in ways that help businesses scale.
Yep. Okay, so we've been talking about traits and things that you look for in people. And so let's just start with kind of breaking down the 7 traits that a Culture Index profile would measure, which are autonomy, social ability, pace, conformity, energy units, logic, and ingenuity. So let's just start with autonomy.
Right.
What's that measuring?
Right. So half of the world is wired by age 12 to advance our position. That would be high autonomy. Half the world is wired by the age of 12 to secure the supply line. That would be low autonomy. So let's talk about high autonomy. When my autonomy is high, I'm a self-starter. I start without being prompted. I have prioritization skills. I am decisive. I'm future-oriented, macro in my thinking. That's high autonomy.
Okay.
Low autonomy would be someone who's born on this earth to be part of something larger than themselves. So for the low autonomy person, it's not about them, it's about the team, it's about the tribe. So these people are team-oriented, tribal, risk-averse, don't like confrontation, and they're all about being part of the winning team. They want to win, but it's not about them, it's about the team.
Yep. Social ability.
Social ability. Half the world needs, wants, and seeks social acceptance. That's the high social ability. So what's the benefit there? People-oriented. Everything they accomplish is with and through people. They build relationships. Intuitive, empathetic, motivational, people glue, people weld. That's their gift.
That's high social ability.
High social ability.
Yep.
When that social ability is low, they're about things, not people. Think versus socialize. So think of the low social ability trait as introspective, private, but they have gifts that the high social ability trait doesn't have, and that is that they are analytical, they're technical. They're going to say they're realistic. The high social ability person would say, okay, whatever. You're actually kind of skeptical because you don't accept anything at face value. It has to be proved to you. So for the low social ability person, give me facts and data, save the fluff.
Yep.
Because I'm not going to believe it just because you say it.
Right.
If I don't need, want, or seek social acceptance, am I going to sugarcoat it?
No.
The low B person is going to give you the direct or the blunt answer.
Yep.
That's social ability. The speed of movement would be the pace, as you had mentioned. When the pace is, or on the high side, we find that people that are patient, people that are process oriented, creatures of habit. So for them, they do their best work when they can do it methodically and in sequential order. It's all about the process. If we can build a process around it, we can perfect it.
Yep.
If it's repeatable, it's perfectible. They like the predictable work environment. They like the routine. What they do not like is change, but they can be very efficient. Think of the cardiac surgeon that does the same type surgery all day, every day, gets to be very efficient at it. So it's not that he's slow or she's slow. They're methodical in their approach. And they prefer that type of work. For the opposite, it would be the impatient people. So these people are tense, impatient, quick. They don't do well doing the same type thing every day. They need variety and change. They do well with stress and pressure. So think of an emergency room doctor, right? So I'm setting somebody's broken arm. Somebody comes in with a gunshot wound. I've got to get that stabilized. While that's going on, somebody else comes in with a broken leg, and I actually do well with stress and pressure. I crave it at some level, and we measure the intensity of these traits. I crave it to do my best work.
Right. So like a coder in Silicon Valley might have like a high, what we call a C or high pace, because they can stay focused on the same thing all day long, and that makes them happy.
Right. Think of a sniper, Chris Kyle.
Yep.
Being able to sit out there all day, every day, and maintain focus during the heat, getting bit by bugs, no restroom breaks, staying absolutely still.
Got it.
And being able to focus. Yep.
Conformity.
Half the world are perfectionists. That's high conformity. They have a compulsion to complete. So when you need a compulsion to complete, you need somebody with high conformity. Detailed, thorough, finite, by the book, precise, perfectionist, anal retentive, particular, black and white, not gray.
Yep.
Right and wrong. If it's not right, it's wrong. Get it right.
Yep.
Dot your I's, cross your T's. That's the high conformity. Very hard on themselves. Why? Because their standard's perfection.
Right.
So if they know, I say by the book, when they know what the book is, they hold themselves to that standard. And by extension, they're judgmental because they hold others to that standard as well.
Right. Low conformity.
Leave the details to others, color outside the lines. In some cases, just color, because you don't really know where the lines are. And so their gifts are that they're out of the box creative. Everything's possible. They're not bound by the rules. And while they may forget some things they'd like to remember, the good news is they're going to forget some things they want to forget. That's in the past. We're moving forward, and I'm not going to be hung up on spilt milk. That was in the past. And the downside to that also is that follow up and follow through isn't their greatest gift. Again, they're going to forget some things they might like to remember.
So high conformity finisher, low conformity is more of a starter.
Depends on where the rest of the traits are, but yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, high conformity, think of that as brakes. Low conformity, no brakes.
Right.
Yeah.
Energy units.
Right. So we all have different mental levels of mental stamina, different size batteries in our brain. So some of us need more sleep than others. Some of us need more recharge time than others. Some people need very little sleep, 4 or 5 hours of sleep. They can go, more like an Energizer bunny. Others, like me, need our sleep. And while I can work a 16-hour day and have a kick-ass day, I'm not going to be doing that on a daily basis. It's just the way it is.
Yep.
Right.
Logic.
Yeah. So think of it as the way people make decisions. And it's the filter for new information. So is my filter for new information more emotional or factual? So, low logic would be people that make decisions factoring emotion in heavily. Their filter is going to be emotional, and they'll get their feelings hurt from time to time when the offending party didn't mean to do so.
Yep.
because the filter is emotional. On the high side, factual. So those people are going to make decisions without allowing emotion to factor in at all and can come across as emotionally detached.
Yep.
And then there's what we call an emotionally available competence, so that they'll pick up on emotion that can help them win.
Yep. And then ingenuity?
Ingenuity is measuring inventive thoughts. Most of us are normal in this range, which just simply means we don't have inventive thoughts popping into our head throughout the day every day. When I say inventive, I'm talking about Edison inventing the light bulb when we're carrying torches or kerosene lamps.
Yep.
On the high side, people are going to have 80 on average inventive, unusually creative thoughts every day. Now, most of those ideas aren't great or related to what they're working on. Some of the ideas they have are truly fantastic. So think of Bezos, Musk, Freud, Disney, Einstein, Jobs, high I traits.
High I traits. Okay, so all these traits are measured in this survey, which let's just take 1 minute to describe the survey. I remember when I first met you and you said, hey, take this, it'll take 5 minutes. And I thought there's no way that it'll be able to pick up on who I am. It's basically 2 word banks, maybe 50 or 60 words. And the first one, you just pick the words that describe you. And then the second one is describe yourself in the workplace. So can you just paint some color as to why those are important? And
Right. The first question is describe yourself.
Yeah.
The second is, who do you need to be at work to be successful? So there are 174 words to choose from, and you can choose as few as you'd like, as many as you'd like. Whatever
Any
you
order.
choose, any order, it's gonna whatever you do is gonna tell us a lot about you. So we're gonna be able to understand who you are based on the first question.
Mm-hmm.
Describe yourself. Who do you need to be successful at work? What we're looking for is how properly aligned is the person.
Mm-hmm.
Right? How much do they feel the need to behaviorally modify in order to be successful?
Right. Okay, so somebody takes their test. The output of that is what we call a dot pattern. We don't have to go into the actual dot patterns, but it basically breaks people out into 19 different patterns. So we could call it 19 different types of people. Is that the way to say that?
Yeah. So there are tens of thousands of possible combinations of traits. And so what we do is we fit everyone into one of 19, what we call typified patterns.
Okay.
Yep.
And those patterns are then further broken down into kind of 4, call it categories of people, which are visionary people, technical people, social people, and organizational people.
Right.
So maybe let's just start with visionary people. What are the types of people that would fall in a visionary category?
Right. Those are people whose greatest gift is vision. They're results oriented, a lot more interested in results than they are with the minutia.
Mm-hmm.
They're data driven, so data resonates with them in ways that it doesn't with half of the world. So they're going to look at metrics, and pretty quickly the metrics are going to start telling them a story. When we have to get bigger, stronger, faster, when we have to innovate, when we have to shake it up, I'm looking for one of those patterns.
Technical people.
Technical people are also data-driven. They're born on this earth to keep the trains running on time.
Mm-hmm.
Compulsion to complete, do what I say what I do, judge themselves in terms of their ability to get it right, have high expectations of others as well. So when we need data-driven, perfectionists, I'm looking for a technical pattern.
And in a company, like what would be some positions that might fall into a technical pattern?
It's going to depend on what the goals of the company are. So it could be CFO, it could be COO, it could be. I mean, we find them everywhere.
Yeah.
We find them in operations. We find them actually being customer service.
Yep.
Right.
Social people.
Yeah. Now these are your optimists.
Okay.
These are the people that remind us that everything's going to be okay.
Yep.
And when it's about relational sales, where the most important thing is to build a relationship and then get something done, it's going to be one of these patterns. And some of the best counselors on earth are going to be in this category because they don't judge others. They're great listeners. They truly love people because they're people.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the most creative marketing people are in this area. Some of the best experiences that you have at a restaurant can be from a pattern in this social pattern.
And then organizational people.
Right. So these people are wired to execute upon that which has been directed. Generally speaking, there's one of these patterns is wired to give direction, but the rest of them tell me what to do and I'll do it. Some have more people skills than others. Some are more technical and analytical than others. But these are the people that are born to keep the trains running on time. But they're going to learn from experience versus being the best problem solvers.
Right. Can we talk just a little bit maybe about like complementary people? So I fall in the visionary category, and you've been outspoken about like who the people need to be surrounding me and on my team in order for me to, stay sane. So maybe if we just said like what buckets pair up well together.
Yeah. So data-driven people tend to understand each other better than people that, than a data-driven person working with someone who's not.
Right.
That's one area. Results-oriented people tend to understand each other better than people that are, as an example, Chris is all about big ideas, bigger, stronger, faster, growth, go, 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 go. And you're data-driven. But even if you're talking to somebody else who's data-driven, but their greatest gift is micro, let's get it right, Chris.
Yeah.
Then that's nice. But, how much more fun is it for Chris to be thinking big picture than being drawn into the details?
Is that why I hate sitting in meetings all day?
That's one of the reasons, right? Right. Yeah. One of those things is, you have a lack of patience, you have a short attention span, and you want to keep it big picture.
Okay. So people take the test. It's formulated in a dot pattern, which y'all teach people how to interpret. And like you said, there's thousands of combinations. And so being able to interpret that is important. I think my next question, when you're meeting a company for the first time, so you've met call it the CEO of the company, they're on board with moving forward, kind of what happens from there? And then I kind of want to dive into like the statistics behind like how many people tend to be in the wrong seat in a 25, 50, 100 person company, like maybe percentages. So what happens after a company signs on to Culture Index?
Well, so real quickly, you go to cultureindex.com. It's not going to be particularly impressive, which is by design. We want to keep it pretty high level. So our brochure is a demonstration, right? So we go in and we survey a lot of people from the company to demonstrate the validity of what we're doing, to help them understand who's in the right seat, who's not, and why, and what the data is revealing. They make the decision to move forward. And there are, Chris, it's going to depend on the company because there are sometimes certain companies have more people in the right seats than others.
Yep.
I'm working with a nonprofit in the area that has 50 leaders, one of which is wired to be in leadership. So, and the results will bear that out.
And somebody might say, well, who are you to say who's to be in leadership or not? Who's to say the other 49 aren't leaders? Because I would bet if they were sitting here, they'd probably say, well, Stanton, you're full of shit.
Yeah. Well, and so good question. So the first question I have is, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? So we don't go in and prescribe and say, you have nobody that's wired to be in leadership. If I understand what their goals are and what they want to accomplish, then I can look at who's in the right seat, who's not, and why based on the data. And one of the things that would lead me to, let's just say a company wants to grow, and they have to get bigger, stronger, faster. And there's a department, let's say it's operations, and they want to grow at a rate of 15% a year, 20% a year. And we have somebody in operations who needs to be liked more than they need to win. That's their wiring. There's nothing wrong with that. They're not risk-oriented. They don't like confrontation. What's the likelihood that person's going to be able to hold others accountable? What's the likelihood that person might be able to be is going to be results-oriented, right? So those are the kinds of things I look at.
And just kind of on that topic, you obviously get people that probably see their results, and it's probably, well, to be clear, there's no right or wrong result. It's just these are the different types of people that y'all have identified. If somebody's saying, I know I took your test, but that's all bullshit, how do you respond to something like that?
Then what I would do is go through it, construct by construct.
Right.
They're the ones who gave this to us. We don't measure clinical or abnormal. I mean, assuming they're not clinical, they're going to agree with the interpretation.
Got it.
May not like it, but we're going to focus on, well, here's what you're great at.
Yeah.
Let's just get you in a role where you can do that. How much more fun are you going to have?
How often do you see people that have a profile and they've been in this, and then after you've read the profile, it's like, this is who the person says they are, but then who they need to be at work is somebody totally opposite?
Yeah, we call that reverse polarity. So we're measuring everything on a bell curve. All these traits, a lot of these traits on a bell curve. So, and we're measuring. We know what normative is based on the bell curve, and we know what higher than normal is, lower than normal. When I have a higher than normal trait go low in the job, or a lower than normal trait go high. Let's say they have a higher than normal trait, and then at work they feel like they need to be lower than normal. They have a lower than normal trait, and at work they feel they need to be higher than normal. That's reverse polarity. So that's kind of an out of body experience. So they feel they need to be someone very different than who they are.
Yep.
So
do they even know that they're having to be somebody different, or do they kind of realize that when you start talking to them? Like, if you've never done this before.
Yeah. They many times will know they're under stress. They don't necessarily completely understand why.
Right.
So this just explains it.
Yeah.
It's just data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever see these patterns where maybe somebody's been at, again, same role, but at multiple different companies? You read their pattern, and who they are versus who they need to be at work is like two opposite people. But then you look at their resume and it's like, I've been an accountant here, I've been an accountant here, I've been an accountant here. Are they typically leaving? How do I ask this? Are they typically leaving the company before because they think they don't like the company, but in reality, they just hate being an accountant? And so they keep the accountant job, but they keep thinking, well, the company is the reason why I'm just going to go on to the next company.
That does happen. It does happen.
Yeah.
Hopefully for their sake, they realize that they just need to do something else.
Yeah. How many times have you presented the facts, the data that y'all get, and somebody's like, oh my God, I've been waiting to hear something like this my whole life, and you just freed me up?
We do hear that. We do hear it, quite often.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay. So let's just take my friend Brent Bashore says all the time, small businesses don't stay small on purpose. Assuming that a company has a great product and something that could really scale, but is maintained a small business, you usually look at like, who are the people in the company. So you've looked at hundreds, if not thousands of small businesses, the construct of people in the companies. Are there some common themes of why small businesses stay small from a people standpoint? Is there usually something critical missing, or, common diagnoses?
There are some things that can be in common, but this can be the cause of this. There can be multiple causes. As an example, the proverbial number one pattern that we measure that is best at getting a business off the ground is not the best pattern for scaling a business. So their greatest gift is, getting it off the ground, but they are their nature is to be very controlling, and so their need to control is a lot greater than their ability to extend trust, and so they will many times hire people that are servant-hearted, and as opposed to other visionary patterns that help them scale because they want to maintain control. That's one reason. There are other situations where you have someone who's just really smart, and they come up with a great idea, but they're not the person that is wired. They're not a big gas pedal. They're not a bigger, stronger, faster person, and maybe they feel like that I not only need to keep the title, but I need to be that person, and so they fool themselves into thinking that somehow that might work.
So like Thomas Edison would be great at inventing the light bulb, but maybe not be the person to go build the light bulb company.
Going certainly.
Yeah. What do inventors typically fall in? Which type of category?
That's going to be one trait that we measure. So it could fall into a number of.
Okay.
It can fall into.
But that's ingenuity, basically.
Right.
Okay.
Now, well, it depends on how naturally they're hard on themselves and how hard they are on those inventive thoughts. Someone who's not hard on those inventive thoughts is going to give some of those thoughts more of a chance to grow and sprout and develop.
Right. Kind of going back a little bit to the common mistakes, I kind of cut you off, but you had mentioned kind of the visionary guy that is like a one-man band with a bunch of helpers. Then you talked about maybe the inventor that, invents something great, but also thinks he can build a company and they stall out. Anything else that kind of comes to mind of why small businesses stall out?
Yes. It really, Chris, it always gets back to who do we have on the bus? Are they in the right seat? Based on the wiring. And when I understand what the goals are, I can tell any company based on this 5-minute survey who's in the right seat, who's not, and why, and it doesn't miss.
Yep.
That's it. So it all gets back to right people, right seats.
Maybe just sticking on the theme of, in my experience and people I know, I think the first example you gave of kind of this big visionary with lots of kind of yes people around them tends to be maybe a more common theme than some like great invention. So maybe if we just stuck there. So you have this guy or woman that has started this business, hard charged it, started it, got it off the ground. And you said the people that start things don't always necessarily scale well. That's a unique, being able to kind of carry that along. So like, what do you tell that person? How hard is it to get that ringleader to understand that he's the person in the way?
Yeah. Well, the first question is always going to be, what do you want to do with this? Well, I mean, because building a lifestyle company is fine if that's what you want to do. No, we have to scale it. I mean, okay, so what does scaling mean to you? I mean, what's the rate of growth? I want to grow. I have to grow 20% a year. Why? Why do you have to grow 20% a year? Really understanding what these reasons are. Okay, so what happens if you don't? There's no if we don't. We have to, we will. What do I have to do to grow 20% a year? Now I can help.
Yep.
Because now I'm going to look at who's in leadership at every role, including that person. And based on what you've told me you have to do, that person I may say, keep the title, but you're going to have to go over here and do something else and bring in somebody else that's wired to drive that kind of growth. And so it's a facts and circumstances situation.
Do most small businesses even know what they want? Like I think the hard charging guy that's the visionary, like the easy answer is like, I just want to grow and scale and be huge and everything else. But when you kind of start dissecting it, do you find that most small business owners like think they know, but they don't really even know what they want?
Yeah, a lot of, first of all, we don't tend to attract lifestyle businesses, right? So, but we do attract growth. The CEO with a growth mindset tends to like what we do. And some of them know exactly what their goals are. But when we ask these kinds of questions, it does, for a number of people, force them to really sit back and think it through. So, because one of my questions, okay, so you say you want to grow, again, at a certain rate. How committed are you to that? One of the reasons I'm asking is, what if that means turnover? What do you mean? Well, hopefully everybody on the bus would have a seat, but in a small business, a lot of times that's not the case. So if you say that's what you want to do, what are you willing to do to get there?
Yep.
Right. So we have to have those kinds of discussions, and it helps them understand just how driven they are to hit those goals.
Right. How far they are from getting to the goal.
And Chris, a lot of that's going to depend on what their pattern is. I mean, the bigger the gas pedal is, I'm not having to ask those questions. They know.
Yeah.
And they're just right. They're going to tell me whatever it takes. So next question.
Yeah. They're not even listening to the end of the first question.
Right.
If we kind of painted a picture of maybe two different type of CEOs, the starter, and then let's just talk about what their characteristics might be like. And then maybe the second would be the guy that actually can scale something from a CEO seat. What does the starter look like? What's their profile and traits that you would see in somebody like that?
Starter, big ideas, have to win, don't want to win, have to win, will win, relentless, enough's never enough, no excuses, don't tell me about the pain, show me the baby, we got to go. Those are traits that are in common with people that are great at starting, right? When it comes to finishing, when it comes to scaling, there are some people that are better at getting into some details and better at, there's some people that are their greatest gift is strategic leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are some people that are born on this earth that are better at leading people as well. And so what we're looking for the sustainable year over year growth is a leader that can hold others accountable, that can get into some minutia easier than some others, and can get into the details that are necessary to drive the results year over year, and that have enough stick-to-itiveness to continue to do it year over year. I mean, some people are better at starting, getting it up and running. Next, hand that off. Let me start something else. Because I love the thrill of the start. And I'm great at it. I love it. I enjoy it. But the maintaining is just like, that's not my gift.
So like a starter that knows they're a starter, they've come to grips with, this is my value add. Have you seen, I'm sure you've met tons of people they understand that. They don't look at it as a negative. I think one of the things I've struggled with is maybe looking at where my weaknesses are is like, well, I'm just going to get better at those weaknesses rather than, nope, I'm just going to go focus on what I'm strong at. So my question is, folks that have started lots of companies and been very successful, when do they know their time is up? Like, when's it time to transition and move on?
Yeah, I think early on, before many times before people understand what their gifts are, they stay around too long.
Yeah.
And they can become destructive as opposed to constructive because you feel like, well, and you feel like, hey, I've got the title, I own it, I really need to be doing things and I really like doing, but that's what I'm supposed to do. And it's when they understand what their gifts are, then I've heard people like that use the terms, it's very freeing to understand that I don't need to fight myself every day.
Yeah.
Why don't I just go do what I enjoy doing?
Right.
Now, the key is, if you're going to do that, you better have somebody running it that you can trust. But yeah.
And when does if you just think of a business, is there a certain size that the starting starts to flame out, or is it kind of situation by situation?
Situation by situation. Some will, but it's going to depend on the pattern. I mean, there are certain patterns that shouldn't do anything more than a couple of years at the most before they move on, because keep the ownership and move on, because go do something else and start something else. It's going to depend on the pattern.
Okay, so a company's come on board. They have taken their tests. They understand where the org chart looks like, who's on the bus, who's not. But then they start hiring new people. And this is one of the things I absolutely love about Culture Index is what's called the C job. So before I ask you the question, just walking you through where my head's at. And again, this is just my view of how we did things. I'm sure there's small businesses that aren't on Culture Index, but still do it well. It's like a job would come up and, HR or somebody would come up with a job description, but they wouldn't really ask all the people in the office that would be working with that person more day to day, like, hey, what do you think this job should look like? Or what type of person should this look like? How should they act? And so you end up just putting up this job description and you haven't really got buy-in from the team. And so y'all have created the C job. And so my question is, what is the C job and why is it valuable?
Yeah, so think of that as a required behavior survey. So our program is designed to be executed or run at a manager level, because the manager knows what they need for any open position. So it starts with a detailed, outcome-based job description. What do I expect this person to have accomplished in 6 months, a year, 3 years, whatever it is? What are their daily activities look like? When we can look at that, and when we see these required behavior surveys come back from peers, anybody that person's going to report to, anybody that might report to that person, and we have input from all those people on the job description, and we're looking at those required behavior graphs, what we call C jobs, then we're going to see some things that are in common. We all agree in these areas. There's some disagreement in some other areas. That's great, because now we can go back and understand why we might disagree. Somebody on the team might actually have a really good point that everybody else didn't think about. So we want to make sure we get that right. And then the company's going to choose one of the 19 patterns as a filter for this role, based on the job description, based on the C jobs. The job description is going to properly written. We ought to be able to look at it and see which traits we need, the order of the traits, those kinds of things. As we're ready to go fish for talent, as people apply for this role, they're going to be ranked in the order in which they fit the desired pattern, 0 to 100%. We will have a discussion as to what acceptable variances from the desired pattern might be okay, what acceptable variances might not be okay, because roughly 5% of all people on Earth are going to have that pattern.
Right.
So we need to have the discussion about what are we willing to live with, what are we not. Why would we interview anybody that doesn't fit within that acceptable variance? Because if I need, Donald Trump's never going to be Bernie Sanders, who's never going to be Donald Trump.
Right.
So if I need the traits, I want to make sure those are right before I start looking at the rest of it.
Yep.
The rest of it matters: the experience, the attitude, the work ethic, the want to, the grit. All those things matter.
Yep.
After we know what the traits are.
So to break that down, you're going to hire a vice president of acquisitions. The team at Fort Capital would maybe have 4 or 5 people take this C job survey, which is internal, it asks 50 questions or so. This is who I think this person should be, and this is what they should be doing. Those results from those 5 people come in. Y'all's algorithm kind of puts that into like, here's kind of the person that you said you need. And then when we start fishing and people send in, this is how we do it. People start sending in resumes. They send in a resume. They fill out the survey. We know immediately if they're within our range of viable candidates. If they're not, we've saved ourselves a lot of time in not interviewing people that were never right to begin with.
Correct.
And we only interview people that have the profile of the type of person that we want to have on board.
That is correct.
Yep. I think y'all did a really eye-opening study on kind of the cost of turnover. It's not just, you kind of lose somebody and then you got to go, put a job ad up and find them. Like I think you said for a $30,000 salaried position, turnover cost is actually double that. It's about $62,000. How do you think about cost of turnover?
Right. So one of the things that I've found is you can do a lot of Google searches and you can find that the cost of turnover is going to be anywhere from 2 times the salary to 10 times the salary if it's a client-facing position. I mean, it could literally be a 10 times salary cost. So I'm a lot better off whenever I let the company tell me what's that turnover cost you, because it's a whole lot more effective when it's coming from them than it is me. But no one's going to argue that it's not extremely expensive.
Yep.
So anything we can do to reduce that, it doesn't take very much to pay for this program. It's going to range anywhere from 2 to 10x.
Okay. Do you have any kind of success stories that come to mind of people that have really scaled their business because of culture or because of not just because of Culture Index, but Culture Index played a huge role in it?
Right. So you and I have a mutual friend, and that's in the aerospace business, and he hired a former client of mine to turn around one of his underperforming divisions. My client is the one who walked me into this company, and he used the program to turn around that underperforming division, and it took him about 3 months before they were cash flow positive. He went through and did a mass layoff, and then hired a lot of technical patterns, a lot of people that are great problem solvers, great finishers, and I was blown away by the speed at which it was able to happen. Right, so that's one. There are a number of things, Chris. I mean, even from a more tactical standpoint, the way I'm making a big difference with clients is working with individual people that are born on this earth to be managers, and I'm helping them become leaders.
Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
So, one example, construction company in Austin, had a good guy, technical pattern, independent, hard on himself, great at what he does, but he had 13 direct reports. Now, I don't care what your pattern is, that's too many.
Yeah.
And he was becoming the problem. As good as he is, he was becoming the problem. Why? Because everything went through him. Well, he has high autonomy. So how much does this guy like being told anything? He didn't like being told anything. So there was a chapter in one of Jocko Willink's books that was written just for him. So I asked
Is this
him.
extreme ownership?
This one was the Dichotomy of Leadership, Chapter 2.
Okay.
And it's so powerful for this. So I knew that I needed to get him thinking about this before I showed up. I made a trip down there, but I asked him to. Actually, he got the Audible, so he had listened to it, and he had been listening ahead. And So when I showed up, said, hey, I'm going to call him Rick. Rick, I'm not here to convince you of anything. I'm not here to tell you anything. What do you want to accomplish here? What are your goals? Every person has high autonomy, has goals. How important is it for you to develop in your leadership skills? What did you learn from that chapter? What did it speak to you? Right. So pretty quickly he came to the conclusion that what had made him successful was not going to get him to the next level. He didn't fully appreciate how he was hurting the company. When he found that out, it crushed him because he's already so hard on himself. How am I failing? I'm not doing well here. I didn't realize this was as big an issue as it is. Like, hey, let's figure out together what we might be able to do to help solve this. So he reflected. He decided, it wasn't me. This was all his ideas. I mean, I asked the right questions, but he came back and said, you know what? I've identified 3 people that I can trust to be in leadership. So we got those people up to speed on the same information, how to be leaders. Took them through the process. And so now they're able to have conversations, healthy conversations, even among themselves. Because, Rick is going to have disagreements with each of these 3 leaders that are now reporting to him. But instead of just thinking, oh, you're a jerk, now they can solve those. They can solve some of the conflict with data and understand that here's why we're disagreeing, and take it away from something that would be personal and something that's more based on data. So when we can do that over and over and over and over again throughout organizations, it's based on what they want to accomplish. That's going to help me understand, is Rick even in the right role?
Yep.
Right. But if he is, then how important is it for him to develop as a leader? And it's my job to help people. Now, there are people, Chris, that are intellectually curious, and there are people that are not. I find you to be intellectually curious because I knew from the very first time we met, you read a lot of books. You consume knowledge. Not everybody does. Not everybody's open. They think, I know it all, and I'm not really open to learning more. I make a suggestion for a book, and they say, yeah, well, you ought to read this. So, I'm open. I want to hear your recommendations too. So we found a very big difference in anybody that is intellectually curious, that understands they don't know it all, that craves knowledge, that wants to learn, and that they apply the knowledge. Big difference in the success of anybody that is versus isn't.
Yep. I wasn't going to ask this question, but I thought about it, and I'm just going to go ahead and ask it because I'm not a rule follower. When we talked a couple years ago, and I had learned all the patterns and the positions, and this is not a political discussion, but I just said, do you have data on the types of people that make it to powerful positions in politics? And there's a quote that every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets.
Yeah.
And we as a country, for probably a couple elections now, have been super divided, and we all seem to think that the people that are running for president are all kind of shitheads. And how does this happen? Why don't great people lead this country? And you had some interesting answers about like the traits that would that people have that would make them want to be a politician. Can you just describe like the data that y'all have and how politicians' profile might look? I know they're not all the same, but there's certain things you said that were like, oh, no wonder we're always over budget and over promising and never delivering.
Right. So this is a few years ago now. We surveyed 30 some odd U.S. senators. And I think there was one out of that group that had high autonomy. Those with high autonomy are big picture oriented. They are, they naturally peer into the future and they naturally see the big picture, which means most people were not, which meant most of those senators' orientation is of today. Going by memory, I believe every one of them, people solve problems different ways, right? There are people that have critical thinking skills, and then there are people that don't. There are people that solve problems based on data, which we touched on earlier, and there are people that don't. And so the majority of those senators solve problems based on feelings. What feels right? What have I experienced in the past? They learn from experience. They base their decision-making primarily on experience and what feels right. So we have a lot of people that have people skills that are, in Congress, whether it's Congress or Senate.
That's why they run campaigns and get elected.
Right. That are going to be told their whole life that they're type A, which is a nebulous term, which just means that they're, energetic, people-oriented, possibly. It may mean that they're perfectionists, so they hold themselves to high standards. But again, very few of them are data-driven. They're not looking into the future to say what the hell is this doing to us? What are the consequences of doing what feels good today? And plus, they're covering their butts, right? So there's no term limit. So they're doing everything they can to maintain their position, and so that drives a lot of their decision making too. So it was eye opening. It was sobering. It was. Neither you or I like to spend a lot of time being depressed, but,
yeah.
but at least momentarily, it's really tough to see. Plus, the people that are going to be the most effective aren't the most electable.
Yep.
So,
the system is not designed to bring in future-thinking people making decisions on facts and logic, because a lot of politics is emotion and how we feel.
Right. There's a lot of that going on too, a lot of emotion. So, the founding fathers, if they could have done anything differently, I would have, term limits. They just didn't ever think of it. They thought, they're going to go back to the farm after a few years and somebody else will come in, but that's not what's happened.
Yep. A couple more questions, and then we'll get into a couple fun ones at the end. So you meet a business, they've got the money, they can afford Culture Index. They've taken the first, I don't know if it's free, but usually you'll go in and do some free testing just to kind of paint a picture. Why do most people not do this? Because when I did it, and this is no sales pitch, I'm not making any money for pushing Culture Index. It's just been a life-changing thing for me, not just for my business, but for people that I interact with on a day-to-day basis in my personal life. It seems so obvious to me that somebody would want to do this. Why do most people, what's a reason you get a no?
Yeah. So we know before we review the data with a business owner or an executive, whether they're going to ask buying decisions, or buying questions. So for someone like you in a company like yours, with your pattern, big gas pedal, results oriented, no nonsense, no time for mistakes. If a company like yours with an executive pattern like yours is profitable, probably going to sign up.
Yep.
There are
so you almost know before you get the no that it's going to be
unless I were to screw it up, right?
Yeah.
Then there are executives that are more, so you're a big gas pedal. So let's say you have an executive that's a brake pedal. Well, your perspective as a big gas pedal is, I see it. It's clear to me. I don't need historical evidence to make a future-oriented decision. The evidence that I need, you've already shown me in this, in this demo of yours, because you didn't miss.
Yeah.
You nailed everybody. in terms of their traits and their behavior. So for that person who is historically oriented or a brake pedal, they're going to look at it and say, well, what historical evidence do we have that this is going to work? So then they're going to want, we've got validity reports. They're going to want other validity reports. And then they're going to say, well, I need references. Well, I need specific references that have experienced these specific things. And then, so in other words, they can't get enough historical evidence to make a future-oriented decision. So a lot of it has to do with the patterns of the owner or the executive, and whether they're profitable. But if they have a pattern like yours and they're profitable, they ask questions and they tend to sign up.
And for the record, I probably should ask this at the beginning. Depending on where you fall on science, your traits are set by, call it age 4, maybe as far as age 12. You made a pretty bold statement and said once they're set, they're set. There's no way for people to change who they are without some major medical, maybe brain injury or something of that nature. There's all these self-help books and all this stuff that's, you're reading about how to be a better person and do all these things. I'm not saying they're bullshit, but if you are who you are, how much can you kind of change who you are?
Yeah. So the traits don't. Now, I'm a parrot here. I'm repeating what psychologists say, so I'm not a psychologist. But
yeah.
But what they tell us is the traits are set early in life, and that once they're set, they don't change. So now, let me provide some color. So I have the same traits today, and I'm mature, that I had in my 20s, and that was not that wasn't recently. So in my 20s,
you look like you're 40, man.
Yeah, well, yeah, I do. In my 20s, I'm young, and I'm at some level, I think I hit the lottery with who I am, and so there were bodies on the side of the road, and there were unnecessary bodies on the side of the road. At some level, and I'm not proud of this, I'm not, but I looked at people and like, well, I judged them based on who I am. I'm like, well, you don't measure up, you're not enough of this, you're not enough of that. I just thought everybody ought to be more like me. That was not good. That was not helpful. That wasn't helpful for me. And so I learned over time that I learned to value others. Now, what's the difference today? I mean, I have the same traits, but I'm more mature. I've learned people suffered as a result. I suffered as a result, but I've learned to value others for their differences. One of the number one patterns people tend to look for after they go through training was my kryptonite before I learned to understand the beauty of it, because I only looked at what they're not.
Right.
Hostile. I looked at them as jerks, and now I see beauty because I understand them, and I'm like, I'm not going to let the negatives bother me. And I don't doesn't give them a free rein to be an asshole. It's just that there's beauty in every pattern. And when you understand that and value it and get it properly aligned, it's actually a lot of fun.
So what would you say just tell somebody that's saying like, I want to change?
Yeah, I think coping skills are important. I mean, I am more autonomous than 90% of all people on earth. There are some pluses to that. There are some minuses to that. How important is it for me to be aware of this and to understand that I'm going to freak out a large percentage of all people on earth if I don't find out how to manage that, right? So coping skills are good, but, in terms of changing the traits, you can buy people books, you can send them to seminars, you can send them to therapy, and, the traits are the traits.
Yep.
To your point, there's a multi-billion-dollar segment of the market out there that focuses on this. And the sooner we can focus on who we are and revel in it and get people properly aligned, the better.
Yep. All right. We're going to just ask a couple personal questions. Has nothing to do with Culture Index. We should get through them quick. But this is something I've asked a lot lately just because I have never had one. And recently, COVID kind of gave me one. Do you have a morning routine or something that you do to kind of get your day started?
Yes, I do.
Let's hear it, baby.
Well, it's a little, so I get up about 4 every day, and I have an Apple Watch, and I resisted being held accountable. I don't like being held accountable by anybody or anything, but I decided that it was good to hold myself to be accountable to burn at least 1,100 calories a day. So I start every morning with exercise. I have a banana. I have a caffeine / there's other stuff in it to wake me up because I never really feel like I have enough sleep. And I start burning calories. And I will, my goal is to get at least 700 burned by about 7 in the morning.
Got it.
Sometimes more.
What's the best advice you've ever been given?
Well, for me, I'm all gas and enough brake to keep me out of jail. So the best advice is to, and this gets back to me valuing people that are different than me. Seek wise counsel. That's the best advice.
Yep. All right. And maybe you just answered it. If you had a billboard on I-30 that you owned and there's hundreds of thousands of cars that pass by every week and you could put anything on that billboard for the world to see, what would you put on there?
You know what, Chris? I just bought, I saw something on some startup company, t-shirt company, that on a news station, and I was so pumped by what they're doing that I bought a t-shirt, and the t-shirt is live like it's 9/12, the day after 9/11.
Yep.
That's what I would put on that, because I'm so sick of the way we can't even agree on anything. We're all in this thing together. We need each other. I hate the fact that we can't agree on anything and everything gets politicized. Let's find some common ground. Let's just, we're all human, and let's just live like it's the day after 9/11.
I love it, man. Okay, what is the best way for people to reach you and get in touch?
Yeah, so it's S. Williams at cultureindex.com, or text or call 817-480-7557.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Chris.
Hey everyone, it's Chris here again. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star rating, or write a quick review. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next episode.
Chris Powers is the founder and CEO of Fort Capital LP. All opinions from Chris and guests of the Fort Podcast are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Fort Capital LP. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for real estate or investment decisions. The Fort with Chris Powers is produced by Straight Up Podcasts.